Hey, what's up, precious metal peeps? This is Brian Kuzmar with Commercial Rare Coins and Precious Metals in Lauderdale by the Sea. Another cloudy, overcast, rainy, beautiful day here, and wouldn't want to be any other place. Can't enjoy the great days unless you have a couple rainy days. And of course, as you can tell when I say great days, I mean sunny days, but hell, I would appreciate it if I didn't have days like this. And the surf looks not too bad out there, even though I'm not going out today. Well, let's take a look at our update for what is today? Wednesday. I'm sorry, I kind of lose my days here a little bit. It's been a busy day here. Wednesday update on precious metals, and move on to this right here, the Great Financial Reset. I know that says debt jubilee right here. I'm not quite sure where the jubilee came from, but the financial reset caused by debt. And we're going to talk about that a little bit because this is all I've been hearing about. I've been hearing about the financial reset, the financial reset. Brian, have you heard about the great financial reset that's coming up? Well, I'm out here looking around. There's certainly plenty of videos that talk about it, and most of them kind of clickbaitish, including my video over here. It's a little bit clickbaitish, but if you read the rest of the headline, it says BS, which stands for what? Bullshit. So we're kind of acknowledging ourselves here in this video that some of this is just pure BS and hype to sell precious metals. Anyway, if you look at the pages, there's pages and pages and pages talking about global currency reset, global currency reset. And I got to be honest with you, I haven't watched any of these videos right here. I don't know who a lot of these precious metal experts are. Some of them, and that doesn't mean that they don't know what they're talking about. However, I don't know who they are and what they're talking about, but kind of a lot of more clickbait. Time to exit gold and silver, 18 months away with Rick Rule. I guess I have to watch Rick Rule's advice on why I need to exit gold and silver. Sounds a little bit contrary to what I'm talking about. But hey, maybe I'll do a show like that one time. I'll take a look at some of these other guys and see what they're saying and see how we agree with them. I'll start with the big guys first. Anyways, the great financial reset. And let's talk about that a little bit here before we go. And I tell you what, before we do that, let's talk about what's happened in precious metals today and what I thought yesterday. Kind of a little bit higher. I thought we might see a $10 update from yesterday's close. However, we saw about a closer to a $15 rise, almost a $20 rise in gold, because I think it was around 1900 in the New York close, not what it opened at this morning. And silver, man, popped up above that 25, kept there a little while, backed off on the aftermarkets here. And platinum just kind of trodden its way up. And as I said, folks, you've been following my show, gold is the leader in this. As much as I love silver, I still think it's way underpriced. I think the gold and silver ratio is still kind of too wide and is going to tighten up at some point. Again, we discussed that last night's show. Platinum, I love too. I think platinum is just way, relative to rarity on earth metals, platinum is rarer than gold. It really is, and my understanding it is on a geological ratio. I believe platinum is rarer than gold, but it's just really cheaply priced for whatever reason. Palladium, I don't even want to talk about palladium anymore. And oddly enough, I didn't say I wasn't going to talk about palladium, but really I don't understand it, don't care about it. Nobody asked about it. I think it's mostly used in industrial uses and maybe some, and I think it's a highly manipulated market as well, in my opinion, because it's so small. That's why I think it's manipulated. But it seems to be used primarily in industrial uses. So I'm not quite sure what drives that market, so I don't talk about it much. However, kind of interesting thing, I still think they use palladium inside of catalytic converters. And one of the things that I've been hearing lately is catalytic converter theft is way up. People are getting their cars not necessarily stolen, but people are going out and cutting the catalytic converters out of bottoms of cars. The only reason I can think that this crime is up, not because people need catalytic converters, but because there is a certain amount of palladium in catalytic converters. They used to use platinum, then they switched to palladium, and now look at the price of palladium and look how cheap platinum is. I bet they wish they were still using platinum in catalytic converters because it would cost them about 3 times cheaper. Anyways, I didn't mean to digress there. Don't care about palladium. Think it's an industrial metal. I advise you to stay away from it. The swings are too great and the spreads are too great on this stuff. Stick with platinum, silver, and gold, in my opinion. Let's take a look at the world spot prices here. About the same. A little bit down on silver, but silver is, I'm going to kind of use gold as the lead in the metals here. Silver is too difficult to tell because The swings are 50 cents to $1. Very volatile. However, love silver. I think it's the metal to be in, actually. But if you like steady and secure, not steady, a metal that is really steady and does not increase up and down in price dramatically, gold is probably a better deal. My opinion tomorrow, it's kind of looking like, unless we see some dollar strength, that we'll see, again, par value prices for gold, maybe up a little bit, $10. It'd be nice to see. I think we're in that time of year where we're going to start seeing gold increase up to about $2,000 and beyond. And hopefully we'll breach that $2,100 level. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, that we're going to start seeing that slow, steady climb with gold as we get closer to the holiday season. Silver the same way. I think we're going to breach that $30 mark, hopefully before the end of the year. I think the elections are keeping silver and gold kind of in check. And maybe silver and gold are just kind of a tell on the elections and know exactly what's going to happen because they're kind of steady right now. And if anything, that tells me that it's a Trump win. if you're going to base it on that and base it on the stock market. These markets, a lot of times these markets know what's going to happen in certain things before we do. The money's already played into it, and the big money plays into it way in advance to us. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, or that's a conspiracy theory, but it's just my opinion. So I think it's going to be about par value tomorrow for gold. Silver is going to kind of swing that 25 range. But at some point, I think we're going to see $30 plus. And man, I just can't help but feeling that platinum needs to break that $1,000 level. And at that point, I think it'll play some catch up. As I said, palladium, who cares? Let's move along to what we were talking about earlier, which was the financial reset, the great financial reset that I hear some people talking about frequently. And let's go into a little bit about facts about financial resets. In fact, there is some talk about, I'm not going to say a financial reset, but there is some talk about, well, I guess you could say a financial reset. The Fed considers CBDCs, and this, I believe, is written, well, it's NASDAQ.com, but written by someone that the Bitcoin magazine, Ansel Linder, and probably knows his Bitcoin really, really well. I'm not even going to talk about Bitcoin too much, but he talks about the Fed considers CBDCs, which I think is Bitcoin, and a Bretton Woods agreement. So here's some people in the Bitcoin world talking about another Bretton Woods agreement. The IMF panel on a cross-border payment with central banks, digital currency discussion disguise, headed by Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve. The CBC, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they're talking about a reset here as well in the, here we go. We anticipate this call for a new Bretton Woods agreement, but in the episode we point out why this statement from IMF won't lead to a new agreement. The U.S. and China, both important parts of the IMF, are at each other's throat and won't work together on a Bretton Woods agreement anytime soon. Well, while I don't know what they're talking about as far as Bitcoin in this particular article, and I'm not going to discuss Bitcoin here, I think this was very, very intelligent statement by Ansel Linder here at the Bitcoin magazine. Even though I'm not a big Bitcoin fan, I think it's kind of electronic fiat in my opinion. Others might argue, but I could argue that point just as well. However, very, very, very astute statement. The U.S. and China, both important parts of the IMF, are at each other's throat and won't work together. When you talk about a reset, you can't talk about a reset without including China. I know, love them or hate them, you can't talk about a reset without including them. You can't talk about a reset without including Russia, Europe, Central America, and the rest of the big empires, I should say, because they really are empires. So very astute statement, in my opinion, on this. And I'm going to move along here because he basically talks about Bitcoin. But again, like that statement, all these countries have to be on board in order to have a global reset. Not a national reset, but a global reset. Why gold? James Rickards talks about this, and I've always thought James was kind of like a permabull when it comes to gold. But you know, why not? You can't help but love gold, even though the worst thing to do is try to pick out specific. Well, gosh, I guess that's my show a little bit. It's about picking out what I think it's going to do the next day and long term. So I guess, but you know, I get that it's going to be down, and I'm not afraid to say when it's going to be down. But he's been accused of being a permabull, and I not necessarily think that's true. And maybe I'll rethink my statement on saying that he is kind of a permabull. but extremely smart, intelligent man, been trading in gold, knows this market really well. And he talks about it wasn't always this way. And again, I was a graduate student in international economics in 1973-74. Many observers believe that the gold standard ended on August 15th, 1971. Well, a lot of people say, well, the gold standard ended with Nixon. Nixon kind of cut off the gold standard, but that's not necessarily true. And you can see, he says right here, when President Nixon suspended the redemption of the dollars for gold by foreign trading partners. Let me tell you something. I learned something from this little article from James Rickards. Nixon announcement was a big deal, but he intended the suspension to be temporary. You know, I really didn't know this, and I guess maybe I should have. I should know my history a little bit better, but I really didn't know this, that Nixon expected the gold suspension to be temporary. The idea was to kind of call a timeout on redemptions because the French and everybody in all these countries, and I've spoken about this before, and I'll read on, hold a new international monetary conference similar to Bretton Woods in 1944, devalue the dollar against gold and other currencies such as the German Deutschmark and the Japanese yen, and then return to the gold standard at a new exchange rate. Well, that's what Nixon expected to do, but it really didn't happen. I was able to confirm this plan with two of Nixon's advisors who were with him at Camp David in 1970 when he made the announcement. Kenneth Dam, he names names here. This man knows the precious metals. They both confirmed that the suspension of gold redemption was meant to be temporary and the goal was to return to gold at new prices. Some of what Nixon wanted to happen and did not. The international conference took place in Washington, D.C. in 1970. The result in the Smithsonian Agreement. Wow, I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know much about the Smithsonian Agreement until I read this little article about James Rickards wrote. And you know what? You don't know everything. So, and I'm going to move along to the Smithsonian Agreement a little bit here down the road. I don't want to make this report too long, but I recommend that you read this. The dollar was devalued from $35 per ounce to $38 per ounce during 1971, and it was later devalued to $42.22 per ounce, where it sat for a while, and the dollar was devalued against major currencies in Japan, UK, and France. Yet the return to true gold standard never happened. Obviously, James puts out this was a chaotic time in history of the international monetary policies. Germany and Japan moved to floating exchange rates. Also, Nixon got caught up in his election campaign and the Watergate scandal. And basically, we were never returned to the gold standard. Very, very interesting article written by James Rickards, and it's called Why. I recommend you go to this. It's at thedailyreckoning.com, why/gold, or just type in James Rickards, why gold under your search engine, and you'll find it. My search engine, DuckDuckGo, that's what I recommend, but if you're going to do it, Google, go ahead. Anyways, let's take a look at the Smithsonian Agreement here real quick, because this touches on the reset and what we were talking about, and what they're talking about reset. And I'll go into a reset in a minute, what my opinion is. The Smithsonian Agreement, announced in December 1971, created a new dollar standard whereby the currency of the number of industrialized states, quotation marks, i.e., empires is what we're talking about, were pegged to the U.S. dollar, the major empire at the time. I'm not quite sure right now. Maybe we still are, maybe we're not. These currencies were allowed to fluctuate by 2.25% against the dollar. The Smithsonian Agreement was created by the group of 10, the group of top 10 empires in the world. And there you go. There they are right there, and it's pretty obvious. Raised the price of gold to $38 and 8 point, and then it went up to $42. But anyway, the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944 established an international fixed exchange rate based on the gold standard. A negative, we talked about this too, I mentioned this before. The reason we got off the standard, and I think France was the number one people to kind of say, hey, listen, you guys are spending too much, you're not adhering to the Bretton Woods, spoke to us, spoke to Nixon, spoke to our country, spoke to us, because we were supposed to be the, we were supposed to hold the Bretton Woods Agreement up to the entire world, and we didn't do it. France was the first one to point that out. A negative balance payment and growing public debt occurred by the Vietnam War and the Great Society program. So socialism and wars, I'm sorry to say that, but socialism and wars caused the destruction of the Bretton Woods Agreement and our backing of gold, because we spent way too much money and the rest of the world said, F you, we want our gold back, we want our money back, especially French. And Nixon basically said, F you too, we're not going to give you gold, we're going to just say, hey, we promise to pay you this amount of money. Anyway, it didn't work too well, and as you can see, eventually The gold was not backed by the dollar, or dollar was not backed by the gold anymore. And we are in the horrible situation we are, where we're just fiat currency. Back to fiat currency. Again, if you've been watching my show, you know all about fiat currency. Well, I'm going to end it at this. I recommend that you read this, the Smithsonian Agreement. You know, Wikipedia, love them or hate them. Certain things they get right. When it comes to politics, they suck. Wikipedia sucks when it comes to politics. When it comes to certain financial things that don't have anything to do with politics, they're not bad. So that's when I'd recommend reading Smithsonian Agreement on Wikipedia. Sorry about that. The Smithsonian Agreement on Wikipedia. I think they got it right there. As long as typing in the word fiat currency and other financial terms we've been talking about, and the Bretton Woods Agreement. Don't forget to, if you haven't seen our past shows, type in Bretton Woods Agreement on Wikipedia and learn about that. If you're talking about great resets, and you don't know what the Bretton Woods Agreement is, and now what the Smithsonian Agreement is, then you are behind. You're not any smarter than your neighbor. And what this show intends to do, and what I intend to do, is to make you smarter than the average bear, make you smarter than your neighbor, make you smarter than even some of the people that do YouTube videos that have thousands of views. I'm going to make you smarter than them even. And you know what that's going to do? It's going to help you make better decisions when you buy gold and silver and precious metals. Anyway, this is Brian Kuzmar with Commercial Rare Coins and Precious Metals in Lauderdale by the Sea. As I've said many times, we only deal locally. If you don't live in our area, we don't do any online sales, and I do apologize. We're only a face-to-face company, and I do that for many reasons. I do that for security. I do that for to prevent fraudulent activity, which happens online frequently, and the fact that I only want to deal locally. So if you don't live in my neighborhood, you don't live in my area, sorry about that. You're always welcome to come here, but I wouldn't recommend flying for small deals. However, I do know dealers all over the country, and I'm always willing to share who I know and who I think you can trust to deal with if you don't live in my immediate area. Always happy to answer that question if you call me at 954-493-8811. And call us also if you do live in my area for updates on precious metal prices and what the best deal of the day is. We're always willing to tell you what the best deal of the day is. It doesn't hurt us to do that. We worked on a fixed rate on what we make per ounce. So, even though we may direct you to a much cheaper premium product like a Krugerrand or like 90%, we're still making the same amount per ounce. We're just trying to help you out there. Anyway, thanks for watching, and let's see what happens with tomorrow's precious metal prices. And don't forget to subscribe to my videos if you haven't. Have a good evening.